Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Highruler, and today's video is going to be talking about Suicide Squad. Now, let's talk about what is going on here in the background, because you're wondering why the screen is black. And frankly, it's a great question. Now, what is happening here is that I started Suicide Squad up, and all I have now is a black screen, because for some reason their last maintenance broke the game. So for me, and I'm sure many of you guys, because I'm sure it's not that isolated, we just can't play the game right now. So I'm going to highlight that as we talk about what today's topic is, which is the comments from Warner Brothers CEO, who has basically put the blame on Suicide Squad for their quarterly financials not being as good as they had hoped for, and in his words, disappointing release. Now, it's interesting because I think many of us have now accepted, and many of us have known for a while, that the release of Suicide Squad wasn't great. It didn't do what it needed to do for how long it was in development for. And I think a lot of people now are starting to wonder what is going to happen to Rocksteady. Of course, with the news of Xbox closing down multiple game studios, one of which was working on Redfall, which had promised DLC content that was paid. A lot of people now are looking at Suicide Squad going, well, just because it's promised and free, it doesn't mean it has to come out now, right? And I think a lot of people were hinging on that, going, well, they promised it, it's in their advertisements, you know, they have to deliver on it. And now with the reality setting in, I guess, with Microsoft, you know, basically saying that, you know what, it is paid content that you guys had already paid for, but it's still not coming, and we're going to give you make good offers here. And I think that is something that a lot of people are now considering as we look towards the future of Rocksteady and Suicide Squad. Now, to be fair, I don't think Rocksteady is going anywhere. I think Rocksteady has proven themselves time after time again, versus something like Arcane Austin, which, yeah, had some great games in Prey, for example, and Deathloop. But I think when you look at the output of Rocksteady over the years, I think many could make the argument that Rocksteady is probably a step up above Arcane Austin, and probably means a lot more to Warner Brothers than Arcane Austin did to Xbox and Microsoft at this point, right? So in terms of Rocksteady themselves, I think there's an argument to be made that Rocksteady will be safe if, you know, anything were to happen. Unfortunately, maybe, you know, a little bit of a downsizing there. But I think in terms of the studio, in terms of the whole, you know, operation there at Rocksteady, I think they're safe. I think if anything, maybe Warner Brothers steps in and says, like, you have to make another Batman game, right? Like, this was their opportunity to go outside of the Batman realm, you know, obviously still being within the Arkham universe, but trying something different than Batman. Obviously, it didn't pan out for many different reasons, many of which have been covered. But I think if anything, they'll just be, you know, kind of told that, like, yeah, like, your next game has to be Batman, right? Because for as much as Batman and that formula has been done to death at this point, it's almost a guaranteed hit, right? Now, obviously, you're looking at the passing of Kevin Conroy, what he meant to that role, but I still think there's an appetite there for more Batman, and I think who else better to give it to you than Rocksteady themselves? So definitely think Rocksteady is safe, and I definitely think you'll probably see a shift in direction of Rocksteady from Warner Brothers in order to kind of recoup some of their losses. Now, of course, the problem with that is that every time you make a game, that means there's less money coming in. But if I were a betting man at this point, I would imagine that whatever crew that they have working on Suicide Squad right now is very skeleton, very minor, and everybody else has probably shifted towards that next project. And once again, it wouldn't surprise me if that was a Batman game. Now, let's talk about Suicide Squad here, because this is an interesting point to talk about, right? We've now had multiple comments by the Warner Brothers CEO pointing towards Suicide Squad and the disappointing release of this game. And as someone who likes the game, even though on a day like today, I can't even play the game, I still think that I see the vision Rocksteady was going for, even though I can agree that it missed its mark by a huge amount, and a lot of people just didn't buy into that vision, right? But there have been some misses that are very noticeable even to me, right? Obviously, when you're looking at a live service game, you obviously want to bring money in, right? And I think even if it's a minuscule amount, even if you're not covering every single employee that's still working on this, you know, what are those artists doing? The people who are designing skins, for example, right? And we haven't seen any sort of skins in this game for multiple weeks, right? And I feel like live service games are either making or breaking off of two things, which is their battle passes and their skins. And we can agree that Rocksteady has done quite well with their battle pass and making sure that, you know, you buy it, you own it, and you can come back to it. But their skin offerings for people who do want to spend money and support the game and support Rocksteady has just been disastrous across the board. And I think that's always going to be the case, because as I've said before, I think what we've gotten out of season 1, episode 1 so far is kind of the output that we should expect, right? I've told people before that if you're expecting some sort of grand rework of either the core systems or the seasonal model, that's just not going to happen, right? Especially at this point where now it's been highlighted again to basically say, like, yeah, this game didn't do anything for us, right? And I think obviously when you compare it to something like Hogwarts Legacy, of course, Hogwarts Legacy did so well, but I think it just stems to the point that, like, Suicide Squad just hasn't done what it's needed to do, which was to be a successful live service model, right? And we see all across the industry of very successful live service games. And we're not just talking, like the Destiny or the Warframe, but you can look at many, MMOs, MOBAs, other games like that. And we see exactly how these games make their money. And it just seems like Rocksteady has missed the mark quite a bit. So if I'm going to be a betting man at this point, and I know a lot of people are going to be in the comments saying that, like, yeah, the game's going to shut down, it's over, I can see why, right? And I'm not going to disagree that there is a good chance of that happening. I think there is. I think we look at this and I say, maybe, yeah, like, of course. But if I was to be a betting man, I think what we get is probably still those 4 seasons. Now, are those 4 seasons going to be, grand content, things that are going to change everything, going to be so rich and so filled that it's going to be amazing? Definitely not, no. I think kind of what we got was season 1 and maybe a little bit even lesser than that, Like, I look at episode 2, and episode 2 is obviously a new enemy type, a new mission type, which are great, mind you. But, there really isn't much there. And I look at that and I say, well, that might be our future, right? Like, just enough to kind of keep people coming back to the game, spending whatever money that they have on the little amount of skins and battle passes that they offer, and just kind of move on, right? I think they'll definitely do their best to support it while also kind of, shifting gears a little bit towards their next project, right? And like I said, it wouldn't surprise me at this point if Rocksteady is all hands on deck for the most part in making sure that whatever next project they have is off the ground in order to kind of show Warner Brothers that, like, yes, here's what we got coming up. Here's why it's going to be good. Here's why it's going to make a bunch of money. And I wouldn't be surprised once again if that's a Batman game, right? Because it does sound like Warner Brothers is kind of breathing down their necks a little bit with these public comments. And if these comments are being said publicly, I can only imagine what's being said privately at this point. So obviously, when we look at Suicide Squad, hasn't done what it's needed to do. We do have more disappointing comments in public, and it wouldn't surprise me if more things are being said in private about it. But I'm going to take it as it is, that the game still is kind of just chugging along here, doing what it's doing. This isn't going to have like a revival of Final Fantasy XIV. It's not going to have a revival of many other games. This game is definitely just going to set its sails and kind of, go on the path that it's going, which is very little content, very little things being added. And if you like kind of the formula that is being offered here, that's kind of the formula you're going to get over the next, couple of months to the, all the way to the end of the year. But I think once we kind of get what we get on that, year-long roadmap, it's over, right? Like, that's done. I think any sort of future of this game past that has been signed, sealed, and delivered. And truthfully, yeah, it probably wouldn't surprise me if we get into the back half of the year and they just kind of pull the plug. But I mean, at this point, like, how many people are really working on this game, right? It can't be more than a handful. So with that being said, guys, obviously this game is still broken in some respects, as you guys can see. This game doesn't have the brightest of futures, as we now know, and it just kind of looks like it's just is what it is, right? So obviously it is disappointing. It's disappointing for me to see a lot of these things. Disappointing for me to try to play the game and have this happen, right? But what else am I supposed to do, right? So let me know what you guys think. Obviously, with those comments today coming out, how do you guys feel about those? How do you guys feel about the game in general? And obviously, if you guys want more content, we are going to be switching gears here very shortly to Marvel Rivals stuff. There was a bunch of leaks coming out last night that I didn't talk about because it seems like NetEase may be a little too trigger happy with the DMCA stuff and the copyright claim stuff. So I'm going to try and stay away as best as I can. But starting Friday and moving forward, we do have alpha access. So we are going to be streaming over on my Twitch, covering on my YouTube channels, and it should be a lot of fun. So with that being said, if you guys want more Suicide Squad content, whatever I can give you, and Marvel Rivals, Mortal Kombat, some other stuff that I'm planning, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a nice little comment. I'll see you guys next time here. As always, enjoy the rest of the day and the night. Take care of yourselves. Later, guys.